From Relay, this is Upgrade, episode 541 for December 9th, 2024. Today's show is brought to you by Delete Me, Uni Pizza Ovens, and Data Citizens Dialogues. My name is Mike Hurley, and I have the pleasure of not only being here, but being joined by Jason Snell. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Mike Hurley. It's great to have you back on the Upgrade program.
I'm happy to be back.
I between the last episode, which was from our friend Stephen Hackett, sitting in for
Thank you, Stephen.
and this episode, I got to see you. Well, I guess it was before that. I guess it was a couple days before that, but we got to see each other. That was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome
really
back.
Nice.
You're back in London, firmly placed in the mega studio.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back.
I have a Snell Talk question for you. It comes from Stephen, a different one, V, who wants to know, when one of your favorite movies gets released in 4K, do you buy it again?
I mean, not always, but yeah, it happens. I have a 4K Blu-ray player, so I will buy like movies that I absolutely love. I will buy the 4K Blu-ray of them even. Because if I want to have a real experience, and I don't do this that often, but I'm like a full experience, I will pop in the disc. Extra work required to do that and all, but then, it is the super high disc bit rate and stuff, and it's really nice for the ones that are very special to me, but mostly no. But yeah, like they did a 4K re-release of Real Genius, and I bought that. Star Trek 2, I bought that one. The Abyss finally came out in 4K, so I was very happy to get that disc. So for ones that are very much my favorites and special to me, or sometimes it's with animated movies, if they're beautiful and I love them, and like the Spider-Verse movies, I bought those. So yeah, sure.
I think for me, it's like it is a reactionary thing. Like I choose a movie to watch, and I'm like, oh, there is a higher quality version of this, or I think to myself, is there a higher quality version of this if I have a low quality version? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I press play, I'm like, oh, this isn't good. Is there a better version? And sometimes
that's why I donated all my DVDs, because all my DVDs that were not of things that are not readily available somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I realized like, oh, this movie is just available, or I might even already have it, but if not, it's streaming somewhere, or I can just rent it or buy it in 4K or HD even. And so here's the story: is the library will let you borrow movies, but most of their discs are DVDs. They're not even Blu-rays; they're DVDs. And that has to do with like the people who are getting movies from the library. They're the most compatible, even though they're not the highest quality, and so they offer them that way. And so we were talking about some movie, and the next day Lauren brought it home from the library, and she was like, "Oh, I got this movie," and I said, "I'm never going to watch this on DVD. We will just rent it on HD or 4K, because standard def. I think one of them that she brought home was even cropped. It was like 4:3, and I'm like,
you love it.
We're never
love
watch this, never ever." And it's like, yeah. Am I a snob who is not going to watch anything in SD if I don't have to? Yes. The answer is yes.
I only have a few discs. Like I got rid of all of mine, and like for me, they're the only ones I have. I think they're special for some reason. Like maybe it's a signed Blu-ray or something like that.
Sure.
Like I have a signed copy of Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Edgar Wright signed it. I think it was part of an auction, like a charity thing or something like that. But so things like that I have. But these are discs I never intend to watch.
Yeah, I have more than that. I have maybe 20, 30 discs, and they're mostly either out of print things that are special, or they're 4K UHD, where I've spent the money on the like super high quality version. And but even then, a lot of those 4Ks they're in my Plex. I've already converted them, and they're on my Plex in 4K, so I don't actually need to go to the disc. Even though, again, if I want the highest bit rate, I will go to the disc. I do have a VHS copy of the Usual Suspects that I have only because it is signed by the Flophouse.
Very good.
When Elliot moved from New York to LA, they had a live event, and they were giving away a lot of Elliot's old possessions that he didn't want to bring with him. And listener Mahir, friend of the show, thought of me, which is very sweet, and got Elliot's copy of the Usual Suspects and had them sign it. So I've got that. That's one VHS tape I'll hold on to.
That's very
Even
cool.
though, do I have I think I have a VHS VCR somewhere that I could haul out that's for like old home videos or something, but I haven't used it in years. So old media dies slow.
If you would like to send in a question for us to open a future episode of the show, just go to upgradefeedback.com and you can send that in. Time is running out on getting a 20% off a new annual membership. So it's just now until December 18th. You can go to getupgradeplus.com and use the code 2024 holiday on an annual membership, and you will get yourself 20% off of Upgrade Plus. There'll also be a link in the show notes. If you want to do this for yourself, just click it and you go right there and it will be pre-filled. Or if you want to learn more or give a gift to somebody else, it's very easy over at giverelay.com. But if you subscribe to Upgrade Plus, you'll get longer ad-free episodes of the show every week and a ton of other benefits like bonus content, members, Discord access. It's where everybody is hanging out when we're recording live. But what you want to do is subscribe to Upgrade Plus because you get longer ad-free shows. You help support this show, which we appreciate.
Yes.
This week on Upgrade Plus, we're going to be talking about Jason's new video game hardware, which I'm incredibly excited to talk about.
And also some outdoor cooking hardware. It's a hardware 2 for this time. I'm going to be a little like friend of the show, Casey Liss here, and say this is the last. So people listen throughout the week, right? We record this on a Monday, release it later on the Monday.
Yeah.
But it's a podcast. It's on demand. You listen Tuesday, maybe you listen Wednesday, maybe it's Thursday when you're listening now, but probably sometime during the week, since it's a weekly podcast, you listen to Upgrade. I know I'm explaining how podcasts work, but I just think sometimes people aren't clear about this. What I'm saying is this is the last episode where this offer is going on for the whole week. So whenever you listen, you could go to getupgradeplus.com and get this thing. If next time we'll mention it, but it will only be for like a couple of days after we record, and you might listen to next week's episode and it'll be too late. So don't let that happen to you, is what I'm saying. Don't be that person who goes to Casey afterward and says, but I wanted to buy a shirt or whatever, and it's too late.
And I have just a fun
this is
visualization trick for people here. Like, maybe right now you're in your car or you're on the train or whatever, and you can't go to getupgradeplus.com to sign up by using the code 2024 on an annual membership. Right? I don't know if you knew about that, but that's how you do it at getupgradeplus.com using the code
2024 holiday
on an annual membership. What you should do is imagine the place you're going to. The place where you will sit down, or the place where you will be able to use your phone. Like, picture that place in your mind. Like, like you see a thing that sits on your desk, or you see a thing at the train stop that you've got to go to. Imagine that place and think about it, and tie the thought of getupgradeplus.com with the code 2024 holiday. Tie that in your mind with that place. And then when you get there, you'll have a secondary reminder to go and do it and support the show and get Upgrade Plus. Follow up.
Oh, follow up.
So on last week's episode, you and Steven spent a lot of time talking about the merits of laptops and desktops, and you were wrapping yourself up in knots trying to decide if you wanted to be that person.
It's a topic that actually I delayed a week. We had a lot of topics the week before you left, and I decided to defer that topic to when Steven was here.
Okay,
because he last year, remember, he was my auditor, my Mac auditor.
Yep.
So I thought that would be a very Steven topic, and he would enjoy weighing in on that.
And he did.
And boy, did he.
Yeah.
I bought a MacBook Pro after that.
Yeah, maybe the two of you enjoyed that conversation a little bit too much, because now you're a laptop person.
Maybe. Yeah. So I
what'd
wrote
you go
about
for?
it. I wrote about it in Macworld. A lot of people were really angry with me because I dared to have an opinion that for my own product that I wanted to own, and I think the Macworld editors wrote an inflammatory headline that was like, "Desktops are done forever," or something
Why
like
I'm
that.
finally ditching my desktop Mac for something better.
Yeah, but that wasn't the original headline. I had them change it. It was more successfully inflammatory, and it did inflame people, and then they wrote me angry. I wrote that whole thing about the Mac as the model. I got way more angry email about me buying a laptop than I did about the Mac as the model.
People
I don't
care
even
about
understand
their
that.
computer choices.
They do. But this was me writing about my computer choice, not about theirs. And I was pointing out some things about how it used to be really bad to be a laptop. I was a laptop primary user, right? A laptop was my primary computer up until the 5K iMac came out. And then I was working at home at my desk, and I got a big Retina display, which is my first Retina display for a Mac, and it was great. But before that, I used a MacBook Air and a MacBook before that, and a PowerBook before that. Like there was a long period there where I was docking a laptop at my desk every day, and then taking it home every night. So, but it was weird back then. Is basically how my article went. It was weird back then, and now most Macs in use are laptops, and even the act of docking a laptop and using it lid closed with an external display is, I would say, a common use case. No longer a weird use case, but a very common use case. And because Apple controls the platform entirely with Apple Silicon, and all the work that I think they've done in the hardware and software side to support laptops better over this last decade plus, as more and more people become laptop users, the experience is vastly better. And fundamentally, especially in the winter, I am working in two different places, and like I'm at my Mac Studio right now recording this, and I haven't used this computer since last Tuesday. It's been almost a week because I've been working inside where there's heat that isn't an expensive electric space heater that I'm using right now, that has to run for hours before I get in here to bring this big garage up to even like usable temperature. So I kind of want to be able to go back and forth. And it was that moment of realization of like, I want to be able to go back and forth between these two different workspaces. And it also means that if I travel, the computer I'm using then is also the computer that I use all the time, and all the settings are the same, and everything's been updated. And if I make a change, it's a change everywhere I go. Whereas right now, if I make a change in one place, unless it's to a document that syncs via the cloud, I go to the other computer. I just did that this morning where I made a change to how I had to log into my remote server. And then I got to this computer and it didn't do it because I didn't make that change here last week. I made that change on the other computer last week. So yeah, I got a 14-inch. I know people love specs. 14-inch MacBook Pro, space black. No Nonotexture option. I don't need it. I don't care.
No texture.
No texture, indeed. 14 CPU, 32 GPU. Basically the base model. Okay. Like I said to Steven, that I was looking at on Amazon, except the one thing that the Amazon deal didn't offer, which is 2 terabytes of SSD, because I'm not going to go back down to 1. My Mac Studio is 2, and I'm using 1.5 of it, and I don't want to live like that, especially since with a laptop, sticking on outboard storage is a lot less convenient. Because
so that's the Pro chip, right?
Dangly.
You went with
it is the M4. Oh, sorry, I didn't mention it. Max. That's why
the Max. Okay, so you've gone with the base level of the M4 Max.
M4 Max.
Which is 14 CPU, 32 GPU, 36 gigabytes of memory. Rather
than, because this all started because I realized that the M4 Pro was actually much faster than my M1 Max Mac Studio in CPU and GPU, CPU, but not GPU, because this has more cores. And it was only like 4% faster or something. And I thought, I wait a bunch of years and then spend some money on a new computer, and it's not really that much faster. It's not a great leap. And so I realized the Pro chip is not going to be where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the Max chip because I want that extra GPU speed, the extra GPU cores. I use that for some stuff I do, including like the Whisper transcripts. And once I realized the core of it is, once I realized the Max chip is what I wanted, I thought, well, I could wait around and get a Mac Studio with a Max chip. But then what do? I roll down one of my Mac Studios to the other room, but they're still out of sync. Plus, I've got a MacBook Air, or I could get a computer with a Max chip today. Well, I mean, I could order it today and it'll come next week. Now it'll be here on Thursday or something. And I thought, well, that actually, it makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm going to miss traveling with a MacBook Air, but the fact is I don't travel with a MacBook Air very much.
Yep.
I try to travel with an iPad. If I need to bring the laptop, it's because I'm doing work and podcasts and other things that are more complex. And the fact is, the 14-inch MacBook Pro, while it's bigger than the MacBook Air, like it's not a monster like the big Pro laptops used to be. It's pretty light enough that it's already a burden bringing a laptop with me, so bringing a little bit heavier of a laptop is not going to be a problem. And it'll be my computer with all my stuff on it, which is great.
It's a noticeable difference, but I think there is enough benefit for you that it makes sense to have that extra thickness and weight. Like I think you'll be fine with it because you're getting a lot out of it. Are you planning to use it docked, like screen closed?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I've tried. One of my Macworld setups was a I actually had a monitor stand that had a laptop stand on it. Wow. So I could have my MacBook Air open and it was sort of at the same height and all of that. And the fact was, I don't like multiple monitors.
I like multiple monitors. I don't like monitor and laptop monitor. Like I don't like that. I don't like the size difference that there is between them, and I really don't like having the keyboard and trackpad just out because it becomes too tempting to use it, like to just go, and that's like very bad ergonomically. Yeah, I never liked the height level that you get them at. Like that, I've never really liked that.
No, if it works for you, then great. But like, I don't like it, and that's not the goal of this thing. So it will only work lid open when I'm traveling, or if there's a very like extreme because somebody was like, oh well, now you'll be using it all the time on the couch and all that. It's like, no, I use an iPad. I'm not going to change that. I prefer the iPad for all of that. I had a MacBook Air. I didn't use that on the couch. I'm not going to use this thing on the couch. However, we were just talking about my mom's going to visit, and she's going to be in Jamie's room when she's here, and Jamie's going to also be here, so she's probably going to be sleeping out in the living room on the couch. And I thought, well, am I going to go out in the other room? Maybe, but it's going to be cold out there most of the time and not heated. And I thought, well, that's a scenario where maybe I bring in my work computer and work in the house.
Flexibility. You have different
but mostly no. It'll be mostly for travel. And that's fine, because then when I travel, I'll have my computer with me, which I know for people who are laptop users doesn't seem like a special thing, but it is actually special because the way it's been working, I travel and then it's like, oh, what's on this thing? Did I update this? Is Photoshop active on this, or do I have to re-authenticate it? And did I install that software on here? I guess I didn't. And all of those things that even in a world where we sync all our documents in the cloud, all of those Mac maintenance things are still there. So I bought a CalDigit Thunderbolt dock because the goal here is one. Yeah, because the goal is single, because I got a lot of stuff plugged into my Mac Studio, right? And the goal here is single cable in and out. On both ends. And I've got it set up in the back. It's a single cable. But out here in the garage, I have a bunch of stuff connected that I need to connect to something else, a hub, that then provides me a single cable that I can connect to charge and drive the monitor and drive all those peripherals. So we'll see how it goes. There are going to be some quirks. I'm sure I'm going to have some frustrations, but I'm ready. I'm ready.
What's happening to the Mac Studio?
I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know. I thought about selling it because it's still pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I also sometimes I just hold on to things because then I've got them.
Yep.
In my little archive of old Macs. So I'm considering that, but it's still pretty powerful. So I haven't decided. If I had done a normal purchase, I probably would have looked at what the trade-in value was for it. But I actually had a friend give me an Apple discount, which is nice. And then it's just out of my hands. Like just magic happens, and the computer shows up, and my credit card is charged, and I move on. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to it yet. I have my server's an M2 Mini, so it's great. I don't need to replace my server, so I don't really know what I'm going to do.
Server.
Sure, why not?
Just like really beefy.
Well, that's a good retirement option for it, but I think probably I'll find somewhere else to put it.
Yeah, or maybe this laptop life doesn't work for you. Like at the moment, you don't know. Like in theory, this is like a great idea, but we're unsure of the potential small pain points that you've not found yet. Right? You're not sure. We've got to wait and find out. I'm excited to see how this goes for you. So when is it due to arrive? This week?
This week.
So do you reckon next week you'll be recording from the MacBook Pro?
I don't know, because it's going to take a lot of setup.
Yeah,
see. It's possible, but possibly not. We'll see.
Well, I look forward to further
updates on this one. Yes. Yes.
Just a couple of bits of follow-up before we move on. So this is not really follow-up to anything specific other than there being a new iPhone. Um, being on vacation, I used camera control a lot more than I even normally do, right? Because I'm taking a lot more photos than usual. And I have just some thoughts about camera control, if you have not yet heard enough of them over the last few months. I continue to really like it as being like a quick way to get the camera open, right? Like I can already press the button before I've even gotten to the place. Like it's just easy. It's on the side of the phone. I understand it. I think Apple made a mistake that the button press is physical, like an actual physical switch. It's too hard to depress. And especially trying to take a picture with one hand, right? So like you just grab the phone and you just want to press the button, right? That is, I think it can be too tricky to snap the picture. I do actually think that Apple does account for the fact that the button is hard to press and like you actually don't get the blurry frame, like you get the frame before.
Yeah, they are trying to mitigate it because it shakes the phone, right?
And
so
I think they know
to.
that. I think they know that, and like I think the system itself knows that, and as well, I expect the iPhone has always tried to account for that. But the thing is, it's like it's not as easy to press as I would want it to be, and I found myself on multiple occasions accidentally switching the camera because I was just like swiping the button when I didn't mean to. I really look. In 18.2, Apple's adding a bunch of settings to the camera control. And there's a lot of stuff in there that's not necessarily what I want them to add is take a picture with the force-sensitive part. Like, just let me take a picture of it. Don't even need to press the button. So I can take a picture by either just pressing it. Maybe it clicks, maybe it doesn't. Let me take a picture in both ways. That's my new feature request. I think I do believe this would have been a better experience if this was just based on how hard you press it, not there being an actual physical switch. But maybe someone at Apple can disagree with me if they tried that out. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is a challenge with camera control. I'm starting to feel like if they want to keep doing camera control in future phones, that they're going to need to spend some time sort of reconceptualizing it a little bit. I think it's too complicated.
Yeah,
and it doesn't need to. I think it's a good idea and doesn't need to be as complex as it is. And you're basically saying I want an easy mode.
Yeah,
where all it is a shutter.
Yep, and I'd be happy with that because I really like having that button there. Like I like having that button there a lot, and I like that even it's got a physical button to open the camera, like physical to open. Right, I click it to open, just tap it to take the photo. That's what I want to do. Just a light tap, and I'll be happy.
Yep.
Two pieces of follow up from people that wrote in about what we're calling the HomePod Touch, which is the
sure.
Yep. Abelson wrote and said, regarding the HomePod Touch and projecting interfaces from the iPhone like widgets, I wanted to mention the parallels of CarPlay, a simple screen device in the home that reuses something like the CarPlay protocol for projecting apps would be, for at least a single user, an ideal method of getting iPhone apps onto a square screen. So yeah, we were talking a lot about like many of the things that Apple have done in bringing like widgets to the desktop, notification mirroring, all that kind of stuff. CarPlay is an even beefier version of that in a way, right? Like it's pulling all of the UI and everything from the phone that is nearby.
Right. The phone is the right way to think of it is the phone is projecting a second screen and it's going on the CarPlay screen, and that's how it's working. And that is, yes, I mean, Apple has built this technology or versions of it multiple times because projecting widgets onto the Mac desktop is a different version of the same idea, which is I'm projecting something out of the iPhone onto another device. The challenge with CarPlay, thinking of CarPlay and thinking of this device is this device has to work fine without a phone projecting its interface onto it. Whereas CarPlay doesn't work unless a phone is projecting its interface. And I think this is the challenge is what happens when you leave? If you leave and another family member is there, is it useless, or do your widgets just go away? If there are multiple people attached to the family who are near or using that device, what gets connected or projected or whatever? Who wins, right?
Yeah.
Two adults are in that house and there's a screen, like who gets the notifications? Is it true doing proximity? Is it doing face detection?
Always going to be a problem with this product, right?
Yes.
Like there being multiple people or have their own lives and phones, right? Like it's going to be an issue no matter what. And it will be intriguing to see how they resolve this. Because in essence, the way Apple would like to tell you that the HomePod works, right, is like it has personal requests and should be doing voice detection. Whether that works or not, I don't know. But like that is the story that they tell with the HomePod. But that's not how this one will necessarily work, because you don't have to, in theory, ask it to do something. It should always be showing something. It's like, whose calendar is it? You know, like so it's going to be interesting to see how they do that.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little skeptical of dreaming too much about how personalized this thing's going to be if it doesn't have an app store.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure it's going to rely on projected widgets from my phone to do something that looks like Standby, right? Because of this issue. That there may be widgets on it, but I'm going to guess, like the widgets I use in Standby, one of them is from an app. And I don't think this is going to offer that, right? I think that this will offer some view into the data on my phone, but just letting me project an app. Because again, what happens when I leave? Does that go away, or is it more Apple Watch like, where it's like loading code onto it that runs when I'm gone? And if I'm gone, is there a loss of trust there that it shouldn't be showing data? Like, it just gets way more complicated when you're projecting things from other people's devices that could appear or disappear on a whim. So it adds complication to it.
And Harvey wrote in to say, to add on to the family of HomePods, so we had the HomePod Mini, the HomePod Touch. What about the HomePod Nano? Could be a small Bluetooth speaker made by Apple. Picture something Google Home Mini size that can recharge and go anywhere. Love it. They should make a battery-powered HomePod.
Yeah, this is okay, so I'm just going to lay it out here. This is a category that I think is dumb, but obviously people like it because there are products about it. Because here's the thing. It's just a Bluetooth speaker. There are so many Bluetooth speakers. Why do we have to smarten up Bluetooth speakers? It's just a Bluetooth speaker. If Apple wants to make a Bluetooth speaker and call it a HomePod and make some money,
that's what I'm saying.
Fine, go ahead.
AirPlay,
but
it's like a little AirPlay guy, not just Bluetooth. Like it's doing his
sure.
Let's go. Let's go. I say.
I guess you can get a perfectly nice Bluetooth speaker, waterproof, everything for like nothing. So why does Sonos need one? Why does Apple need one? And I think the answer is money is why, because people want to buy them. So why not sell them one, even if it's Bluetooth and doesn't really make sense because it should be a Wi-Fi device and whatever. If they want to make money on it, go ahead and do it. But I don't know why this category needs complex products in it. There are a bunch of perfectly fine little portable Bluetooth speakers out there.
This is your final call for nominations for the Upgradies. The form will close on Friday, the 13th. Ooh, spooky.
Spooky.
The form will close. Don't ask me what time. It will be whatever time I do it. So do it before Friday. It's really what you want to do.
British,
right?
Some British time that you might not understand.
I'm just going to close it when I get to it on my to-do list that day. So get your answers in before Friday, your nominations. Upgradies.vote. Again, don't tell us, I meant to. Just do it now. Do it right now.
Do it.
Or similarly, remember where you're going, and when you get there, Upgradies.vote.
Visualize.
And as well, people say, it's too many categories. You don't have to put in all the categories. Just put in the things that you care about.
Mm-hmm.
Upgradies.vote, and it will come to you at the end of the year. This episode is brought to you by Delete Me. We spoke before about how much of your personal data could be out there on the internet for people to see and how uncomfortable that can make you feel. Makes me feel uncomfortable. The sad fact is that data brokers can make a profit from your information. Your data is a commodity, and people on the web can buy your private information, which can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, harassment, unwanted spam calls, and more. But the good news is you can protect your data with Delete Me. I today actually got my report from Delete Me that they send me every couple of months, and I could see all of the data brokers and all of the information that had removed. So many companies that I never would have found on my own without Delete Me going out there into the world and getting rid of this information. I love Delete Me so much, I gifted Delete Me to my wife, Adina. Now, you may say to yourself, Mike, that's not a very romantic gift. But let me tell you, in my life, with my wife, she wants that. There is nobody I've ever met more who cares about their private information than my own wife, and she wanted Delete Me, so I got her a gift of Delete Me. She's now told me, she went, oh, I went in, I put in all my information. I loved that I could just put in the information I wanted removed, and now she said, I can't wait for my first report. So it's going to be coming soon, and they're going to be, just like they do for me, getting rid of her information as well. You sign up with and provide Delete Me with exactly the information you want deleted, and their experts take it from there. Delete Me sends you regular personalized privacy reports showing what information they found, where they found it, and what they removed. And this isn't just a one-time service. Delete Me is always working for you. It's always in your corner, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information that you don't want on the internet. To put it simply, they do all of the hard work of wiping personal information from data broker websites. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up today for Delete Me. With a special offer for listeners of this show and their loved ones, you can get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/upgrade20 and use the promo code upgrade20 at checkout. The only way to get that 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/upgrade20 and use the code upgrade20 at checkout. One last time, that is joindeleteme.com/upgrade20, the code upgrade20. Our thanks to Delete Me for the support of this show and Relay. So, according to Mark Gurman, Apple and Sony have been discussing a partnership that could see the Vision Pro becoming capable of using the controllers for PlayStation's PSVR 2 headset.
How about that?
Now, Jason, I'm excited about this because I get to use all of the information that I keep in my brain about video games that I don't really get to talk about very often. So I would like to give a little bit of information and history about the PlayStation VR, because I actually think it is important context for this discussion, if you wouldn't mind me taking you down this little history lesson. Sure. So the original PlayStation VR was released in 2016 for the PlayStation 4.
Yep, I had one.
Yeah, lots of people do, because it was at the time quite one, everybody had a PlayStation 4. PlayStation 4 was an incredibly well-selling device, which helped a lot. There was a lot of PlayStation 4s out there, and Sony released this hardware, and they had a bunch of interesting games for it, but it was also pretty fairly priced and was the easiest way at that time for somebody to get into VR. Like, Oculus existed, but it was like connected to a PC. Like, it was a much bigger deal at that time. And PlayStation offered an easy way. It had good developer support, by and large outperformed what Sony expected of it. It's reported that they sold over 5 million units of PlayStation VR over its lifetime. And it was interesting for Sony because they were actually able to reuse some technology and some devices that they had. So Sony had something called the Move, like the PlayStation Move, and they had these terrible controllers, which were these like ones with these balls on the top that were used, these balls lit up and were used for tracking.
Weird ice cream cones.
Yeah. And they were able to use those controllers for this. So like, there was these interesting stories that people would get their PlayStation VRs and the batteries were dead in the controllers because they'd been sitting in a warehouse because they hadn't sold. So it's like a very interesting way that they did it. But this success of the PlayStation VR ultimately, obviously, led to Sony developing a second version of the hardware. So the PSVR 2 debuted in 2023, and it was a very capable system. It had new, purpose-made, much better controllers that are essentially like actually really high-quality controllers. And, you know, they're not wired, you know, like they're wireless. They have lots of buttons on them, triggers, and they have all of the great features that are in the PlayStation 5 controller, and they're in these like form factor for VR. But the headset was also very high spec. It had very high resolution screens, eye tracking, foveated rendering, all of that stuff, which led to a $549 selling price. And you also needed a PlayStation 5 of similar price. So this is compared to $399 for the original PlayStation VR. But I think more importantly than the price was that developer adoption has not been stellar for PSVR 2, and that has been the big story with it. It kind of seemed like even when Sony announced it and then they were leading up to putting it out there, it kind of felt like they'd already given up. They only had one first-party developed game, and it seemed like they weren't able to encourage a lot of new developers to come to the platform. And the issue here, I think, is actually Meta is the problem, because they have been acquiring studios and signing exclusives for Oculus. In the last year or two, there's been a couple of games that have been very well reviewed. A game called Asgard's Wrath 2 and a Batman Arkham VR game, they have both been great, like critical successes, but they are exclusive to Quest. So
Yep.
This was a thing Sony didn't have to deal with the first time around. It has been reported that Sony have shipped, not sold, around 1.6 million units of the PSVR 2, and it's also been reported that they have stopped production. They're not making them.
You mentioned Meta. One of the problems also is just Meta existing. So when I got the PSVR, the original, that was my first VR experience, really.
Yeah.
And it was great, right? Astrobot on the PSVR.
Great.
So good.
So good. Yeah.
So good. Immersive platformer. So good. But Meta with the Quest got over the hump in terms of affordability for quality.
Yep.
With the Quest and the
Quest
Quest 2.
It's also more convenient. Like with the PlayStation VR, you still got the PlayStation involved. You've still got a cable involved.
So it was standalone, but with enough power to make the games good for a reasonable price. And yes, compare to the PSVR where you had to run a cable. You had a weird adapter that you had attached to your PlayStation. You had to have the PlayStation. You had a weird adapter, and then cables came out to your head where the thing was, right? It was so ridiculous. And so that was my first VR experience. But, whatever, a year later, I bought a Quest 2. And even though so much of the Quest is not as good as PlayStation is, the difference was it was affordable, it was standalone, it was easy to take off and put on. Just the time of that kind of tethered product that Sony made the first time kind of ended, and this was their response. And again, they're tying it to their console, and it's hard. So I'm not surprised that it didn't do well, because it feels like the market really moved on to the standalone stuff was good enough.
Yeah, like in the overall kind of consumer media, like gaming media, like the PlayStation VR 2 is considered a failure.
Yeah,
and even Sony have made moves that would suggest it. Like, well, one, they still have not had another Sony developed game that I'm aware of even announced, and they have added a feature to allow the PSVR 2 to work with a PC, so you can play non-PlayStation VR games. Now, that is a move of weakness, right? Like, kind of admitting to the people that spent that money, we don't have enough for you. How about we give you another way to benefit from the hardware that you've already purchased? Right. So, bringing us back to Apple.
Yes, now, speaking of weakness,
indeed, we have spoken about it many times that Apple have not made or supported any VR-focused controllers for the Vision Pro, and how we think that this has led to them not being able to support as many games as they could have.
I wrote a whole piece about this back in June about how I understood why, and Mark Gurman's report talks about this a bit too. He has made it clear in some of his reports that there is a sort of Johnny Ive-led philosophy with Vision Pro, which we can all see, and we've all speculated about it. We can all see it, to make this product a different kind of product. It's like, let's just use hand tracking. Let's just use eye tracking. This is what we're going to do. And my piece in June basically said, I played games on the Vision Pro. They're not precise enough. I've played games on the Quest. The hand controllers are perfectly precise and wonderful. And I don't deny that the hand tracking on Apple's product is superior, and I wouldn't want to have a Vision Pro that had to use hand controllers. I absolutely not. Like, I love what it does, but for certain tasks, the hand controller experience is so superior. And just some of these games that I played on the Vision Pro, like, they're just bad compared to the equivalent games on the Quest, because the Quest has the precision of the hand controllers. And so, my piece basically said, Apple doesn't need to make them themselves necessarily, but they need to find a partner or do an open API or something so that developers have some, have the ability to say, this is a game you can play. You need to buy the hand controllers, but you could actually make a game that is of the level of the Quest, which seems silly because we're talking about a $300, $400 product versus a $3,500 product. But that's where we are, where the Quest can play games that the Vision Pro cannot. And it's, I would say mostly because of the precision of the input.
So Mark Gurman's report states that Apple's kind of doing two things. He doesn't say this clearly, I think, but I think you can kind of get it from the way that he writes, that Apple is working on supporting VR hand controllers and is working with Sony to make the PSVR 2's controllers not only work, but it seems to be kind of like the flagship device, like in the way that the iOS devices support Bluetooth controllers, but they always mention Xbox support. And PlayStation.
This is controller support again, except on Vision OS, and then they have to find partners who make these things. I know there's like somebody who did a Kickstarter or whatever that's doing it, but like having Sony's controllers and also knowing that Sony probably has a bunch of controllers in a warehouse somewhere, as the flagship for this, where they can say, we're going to support Sony's state-of-the-art controllers that are amazing and do all this incredible stuff. But theoretically, it's part of a trajectory that leads to Apple basically saying, if there are hand controllers, third-party hand controllers out there, we will try to build support for them.
Apparently, Mark says that this partnership was actually expected to be announced a few weeks ago, but has been postponed, and that the problem actually may be on Sony's side because they've yet to work out the logistical processes of unbundling the controllers from the headsets because they do not sell them separately.
Right.
So if they do, as we believe they do, have this like warehouse of PSVR 2s, I guess the question is, are we going to render these things unsellable, right? Because if you break these things apart, now the headsets can't be sold, right? And so there is an issue here, it seems, on Sony's side of exactly how they want to handle this. Now, they could just make the controllers, but is that going to be worth it? Because again, we come back to that thing we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. Anybody making something for the Vision Pro, you ain't selling a lot because, as Mark Gurman adds in this report, he believes that Apple have not yet sold 500,000 units of the Vision Pro.
Right.
So
no, it's a tiny market. Although you're also placing a bet that maybe if you do this, you will sell some more of them. And then from Sony's side, I mean, what I would say is if Sony has a few million of these sitting in a warehouse, they could probably say, look, let's pull out 100,000 and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I'm sure that they have a sense of if they really feel like they're going to sell them or not. So it's a logistical challenge. I want to read a couple of quotes from Mark Gurman's report, and we can talk about it a little bit more. Beyond gaming, these hand controllers could be used for productivity tasks and media editing. And Apple doesn't have any imminent plans to launch its own controller, but the company's design team spent a few years prototyping what is essentially a wand for the Vision Pro. This could be more of an Apple Pencil-like tool for precise control rather than in gaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like their compromise, right? Of like, could we do a controller for it? And it was. Remember, there were those rumors that it was going to be like Apple Pencil support on the Vision Pro, because there are a lot of sensors in there. But magic wand for Vision Pro. I don't know. I mean, I keep coming back to my excitement about the potential of products like the Vision Pro and my feeling that its initial conception was, I don't know, was kind of misguided by people inside Apple who had some really highfalutin ideals that conflicted with the reality of what was possible. And you end up with a product that turns its back on some of the best things of VR. Like, I understand Apple saying, look, we're really good at the App Store, at least on iOS, and we've got existing apps. So let's focus on being more of a spatial computing productivity platform. It's like, okay. But up to now, most of the stuff that has been on VR has been games. And to entirely turn your back on those games that really require that level of precision of a hand controller entirely. Like, we're not going to even make one available as an option. It's just not there. Just really misguided. So,
or potentially they're misguided in thinking that people would re-architect their games to support the hand tracking, right? Like,
and the ones who
something's wrong here, but neither of it is what you should do.
They did though, like Fruit Ninja, right? They made the Fruit Ninja version. It's like, it's bad. It's real bad. And there's a Beat Saber-esque game that I bought, and it's also really bad. It's not.
Or the Vacation Simulator and Job Simulator, which they actually aren't as good. They don't operate as well. I mean, they're fine and they're fun if you've never played them before, but if you've played them before with a controller, it's not as accurate on the Vision Pro.
Right. So the way this goes, I think, at least potentially, is if Sony can pull this off, it's great because it's two companies that are kind of desperate and are willing to think outside the box. It is a question like about the software on the platform. I do think that's a question, but I do also think that there are developers who have VR products who could be persuaded to bring them to Vision Pro if they could port them to Vision Pro without having to worry about their control scheme being broken, right? I mean, that there is some potential there. And that Meta has snapped up a bunch of these, but like not only are there some of these existing products, but there's also stuff out there that could be ported, but you know, they're not going to do it without hand controllers because they really need that control scheme, and they're not going to rebuild it for Vision Pro hand controlling. Yeah.
No. I think it's interesting to imagine a scenario where Apple could try and convince them. I mean, they could maybe try and convince PlayStation. Like, it's not outside of the realm of possibility.
That's my idea. Is hey, why don't we make it so that the PS5 can use a Vision Pro as a VR input, VR controller?
That would be.
I mean, like,
weird.
It would be weird.
Yeah,
it's all weird.
yeah, it's all weird.
I'm just like, if this is a partnership, I mean, you could make it like, oh yeah, you're going to be able to do PlayStation games on your Vision Pro now too.
And I assume
with Sony.
I mean, I assume Belkin and Logitech are going to be making controls if they're not already. You know, like one of the two of them is going to be making a controller for Apple.
Sure.
I do. Here's the thing: you already mentioned that you wouldn't like this, but I was wondering. So you know, like this suggestion that you could use. There's a lot of suggesting in Mark's report that you would be able to use these controllers to do anything in the Vision Pro. All right, like that is a thing you could do, and because they have all of the sensors, it could work pretty well, right? They have like a sensor space. They know where they are. You've got lots of buttons. You could select things, and I wondered if that was a good experience. Is this another way to get to a cheaper Vision Pro? Like if you removed a lot of the requirements, a lot of the sensors that do the hand tracking on the outside, and still did eye tracking, which you could still do,
right,
but then also had the controllers for other more precise movements. Like, could that be a way to get to a $600, $700 Vision Pro?
Maybe, although what I would really say is that the Quest 3 already does a decent job with hand tracking. It's not Apple Vision Pro level, but they're already doing some of this. So like, yeah, I mean, I guess I am saying that there's a $500 headset that does not Vision Pro level, but okay level of that. Yeah. I don't know where all the price is built into the Vision Pro, right? I don't know how much of that is the processors versus the cameras versus the cloth straps and the stainless steel. I don't know where all the pieces are, but maybe I think Apple would still want to have that hand gesture interface be there, but you, as Meta has demonstrated, there's to a certain degree you can still do it at a lower price point. I don't love the idea of having to use hand controllers, but the hand controllers can be perfectly fine for driving an interface because Meta has shown that. Now, Meta has tried to go the other way and say, well, you can also just use your hands. And there is something really nice about putting on a headset and not having to find your hand controllers, make sure they're connected, make sure that the batteries are up to speed, all of that, right? And having to dock them and charge them and all of those things. Having them not be part of the equation is really nice, but it would be fine. Like, it would be fine. I think the issue is, honestly, I think the issue is precision, that there are some games that just need a precision placement. I think it's less about the eye tracking than it is about the hand tracking, to be honest. I think that Vision Pro's hand tracking is good, but it's just like I used Simple Piano last week for Vision Pro, which came out. And one of the features for Simple Piano for Vision Pro is a virtual piano. So I have a piano and I was able to do that. But you can also just on my living room or my dining room table, I put down a virtual piano, and I started to play it. But the problem is, like, this finger is a little bit occluded by another finger, and it looks at it and it assumes that that other finger is down and plays the note, but that finger is not down. It's still up in the air. And I thought, here are the limits of hand tracking, right? Is that it's all visual and you have to make some guesses. And I mean, you can't play a piano with a hand controller, but my point is, with the hand controllers sensors mean that they know exactly where your hands are in space by fractions of a second, exactly how they're moving, exactly where they are. And as impressive as camera-based hand tracking is, if something gets in the way of the camera in any way, including another part of your body, you can't do it, right? You can make an assumption maybe, but you're guessing. Whereas those wireless controllers, you know exactly where those hands are and what they're doing at all times.
Yep.
And plus they have buttons on them, which for games is really useful because then you've got instantaneous triggers as opposed to trying to, again, making gestures with your hands is something that Vision Pro does a really good job of, but it's got to do a lot of processing. It's got to make some guesses, and that means that it's laggy and it's less accurate. So I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time imagining Apple making a Vision Pro or a Vision of some sort that didn't support hand tracking. But I think you're right that there's a way forward here that says, well, we have two ways of interacting with this thing, and one of them is precise and one of them is less precise, and that's fine.
It's going to be interesting to see if this comes to something.
Yeah, I mean, even if this thing happens, right? Because it's supposed to have happened and hasn't happened. But what I'm going to take away from this, I'm going to choose to be positive about this.
Yes, me too.
Because I wrote about this in June, like I said. And in June, I said, come on, Apple. Hand controllers need to be part of the mix. They don't need to be mandatory. Not everybody's going to need them. But games, there are a lot of games out there that could probably be ported to Vision Pro and new games written for them, but they can't be done. They just can't be done without controller support, and you don't have to build your own controllers. You can do what you've done with gamepads on every other Apple platform, including the Vision Pro, I think, right? Which is just you pair a gamepad and a game controller and it works. It's like, yeah, my PlayStation controller will work on my Vision Pro and it's fine, or my Mac. So if this is happening, the most encouraging thing about it is that somebody at Apple agrees with that. And that's good because I think it's the right move. And I think it's a sign of Apple stepping away from one of these assumptions that they made when they built the Vision Pro originally that have proven, like with those Belkin accessories, right, have proven to be wrong and misguided. And that this is a sign that Apple is learning that maybe those assumptions are preventing the Vision Pro from being successful. So I hope that's true.
I mean, I'm happy to see them continue to change and adapt the Vision Pro in public. Like, that kind of is what this device should be, considering what it is. Like, it is essentially like this future platform. We should see it adapting and changing in front of us. Because then you feel like you're benefiting as an early adopter in that way. Because you adopted it early, that was the point of it, and now you're on the train as it goes down the track.
I don't know what the contractual status of something like the Vader Unleashed or whatever, the game for MetaQuest, but like ILM, we talked to them, right? Did the What If immersive experience. They worked on that too. They're on MetaQuest, and it's like, well, why isn't that on the Vision Pro? And the answer is it can't be, because it's a lightsaber duel, and you can't do it. I can't explain this to people who haven't experienced it, but if you spend any time with a Quest versus a Vision Pro, like my stupid ping pong game, 11 table tennis on the MetaQuest, it's so good. Can't be done on the Vision Pro, because you need a level of precision of hand tracking on the controller that a Vision Pro can't do.
It also just doesn't feel right. Like, no, it breaks the immersion. You should be holding something.
Well, in that case, it's true, but but it's also it couldn't do it. It just can't do it because it can't get that level of precision. So I hope they go down this path, because it doesn't have to be mandatory, but I can't believe after all of that time where they were doing weird things about the Apple TV to avoid having controllers on it, and they finally got the religion about controllers for all of their platforms and have said, yes, all those controllers can be paired with an Apple platform device and work, including the Vision Pro. But then with the Vision Pro, they made the same problem with hand controllers. The fact that they, at their unveiling of the Vision Pro, they're like, it's great for games. Look at this game that you play holding a PlayStation controller while looking at a screen. Like, no, what are you doing? So
that's not it.
Maybe they've gotten over it, or at least some portion of them has been given enough latitude to try this. Great. Bring it on, I say.
This episode is brought to you by Uni Pizza Ovens. Uni is the world's #1 pizza oven company, letting you make restaurant-quality pizza in your home. If you're looking for a gift for somebody in your life that you care about, who you know loves good pizza, get them an Uni Pizza Oven. They can reach up to 950 degrees Fahrenheit and cook pizza in as little as 60 seconds. This high temperature is what means you're going to get an excellent pizza, better than what you would make in a conventional oven. They're really quick to heat up. You'll be ready to go in just 20 minutes. And there are Unis for everyone, whether it's someone who likes a wood-fired flavor, maybe somebody who wants the convenience of cooking with gas, like maybe they already have a gas barbecue or something, or whether they want the option of wood, charcoal, gas, or even electricity, there is an Uni oven that fits every need and lifestyle. They've designed ovens like the Fira 12 or multi-fuel Karu 12G for maximum portability, made for people who like being out in the wilderness. But if you want convenience of gas and love the flavor of wood-fired cooking, the Karu line has that person covered, because you can choose wood or charcoal right out of the box, or add on an optional gas burner for cooking flexibility. And there's also the Electric Volt 12 pizza oven, which lets you make pizza both indoors and outdoors. This is the one that I have and love. I love that I have that flexibility that, weather can be a bit odd here in the UK sometimes, and I can cook pizza all year round. I don't need to go outside to do it. We can just put it on the kitchen counter. Uni ovens are for more than just pizza, though. You can cook juicy burgers, sizzling fajitas, buffalo wings, and so much more. Their ovens start at just $299 with free shipping to the US, UK, and the EU, and they make all of the accessories that you might need: cast iron cookware, pizza pills, thermometers, and loads of other accessories to help you level up your cooking. And even all of these items could make great gifts for that person in your life. Maybe you know somebody who already has an Uni pizza oven. Why don't you go to the store and buy them a fun accessory? Listeners of this show can get 10% off their purchase of an Uni Pizza Oven. Just go to uni.com, that's OONI.com, and use the code UPGRADE2024 at checkout. Uni Pizza Ovens are the best way to bring restaurant-quality pizza to your own home. That is OONI.com, uni.com, and use the code UPGRADE2024 for 10% off. Our thanks to Uni Pizza Ovens for their support of this show. So it is expected that... Oh, the Betails. Hi, we're in the Betails now. Woohoo! It is expected that iOS 18.2 will ship this week, right? If I'm following that correctly. I mean, I was on vacation, but I think the release candidate is out.
Yes,
and the expectation was
soon.
Always early December anyway. So I wanted to run through some of the key features, considering we've both been using this beta for as long as it's been available, which has been quite a while now, and kind of just give some thoughts on them and how we're feeling with them now. We'll start off with Image Playgrounds. How are you feeling about Image Playgrounds right now?
I don't like how they look.
Yeah.
Everything that I've generated, I've either been disgusted by or I've sent because I thought it was so bad that it was funny.
Yeah, it's memeable. They're very memeable. Not in a good way.
I have found that some people, and whether this is their faces or my photos of them, some people I can get images that seem like them. Other people I can't, no matter how hard I try. They seem weird, like weird caricatures. Especially I find that with the illustration view, that like I have a few people for whom the illustration generation makes something that's amazing. I have a picture of John Syracuse wearing a hat with a horse behind him, which is just baffling.
I'm going to include a link in the show notes to a blog post that Alan Pike wrote.
Yeah.
Where Alan was basically, every time any picture of the illustration was not good, and I sent to Alan in that blog post is a picture of me.
Rat Mike. Yeah.
It seems like there is a problem where for some people, and I think both me and Alan are in this club, that the illustration just makes us look like Ratman, no matter what image we feed it, and I don't know why that's happening.
Whereas Casey Liss I think his face works pretty well in the animation style. All my
Yeah.
Caseys look like Casey,
Are you
but
saying Casey is a
mostly
cartoon character? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, yeah, maybe he makes a good Pixar character. Casey does.
I would love to see Casey star in a Pixar film. You know, it'd be great.
Yeah. That being said, the Casey List story. So anyway, so I'm unhappy with the output, and then I know that the other image generators, um, do better jobs than this.
Yeah.
So Apple's behind the state of the art, and I think it's ugly, and I think that the focus on making pictures of people is questionable. I would rather they be more generic pictures of people, a generic person. And yet every time I try to make a generic person in Apple's AI image tools, they're like, no, you must pick a person. It's like, I don't want to pick a person.
Yeah.
I want
Just
this
give
to
me
be
a
a picture of a
person.
wizard,
Yeah.
not a picture of Mike as a wizard. That's not what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah.
And it's not interested in that.
At
So
least with
I don't
Genmoji,
like
you
it.
can specify the emoji, right? Like you just be emoji character in
Yes.
this rather than person in this.
Yes. So this is what I would say about image playgrounds while we're on that subject is I know we've talked about our feelings about
Mm-hmm.
AI image generation from a ethical standpoint and all of that, but I'm going to boil it down to my opinion as a user of this feature, which is I don't think it's very good.
Yeah,
Period.
I absolutely agree. Like, I just think that this feature is not well baked enough for release, but they're doing it anyway. I'm gonna take something Steven said on last week's episode slightly out of context, so I apologize to him. But I think he said something that I think a lot of people I can imagine making this kind of argument for Apple, right? Like Steven referenced something about like their cartoon style, which is better than deciding to try and make something realistic, like because that can be more problematic. Like I think today, just before we recorded, OpenAI released their Sora model, and like some of this video that's coming out from the Sora model now is horrific in how good it looks. Like it's terrifying, but like and it's a good point, but I think Apple's actually not capable of doing it. Like I think. I don't believe that Apple have chosen have not chosen to do the realistic style purely because they think it's the right thing to do. I think looking at the quality of their imagery now, Apple could not do photorealistic in image playgrounds. Like they don't have the ability to do that for whatever reason that might be, because the quality of the imagery in image playgrounds is so bad. There are jokes about like AI as the long term can't do hands, right? Image playgrounds can't do eyes. Every eye is like this color tornado. Like it's bad. Like it's not good. Contrast to Genmoji, which I think is good, a good feature. Like I've gotten it to make lots of fun, strange, and weird emoji, which is usually what I want. And I use some of them frequently. It works very good with tapbacks. Of course, it gets things wrong and weird in a bunch of ways, but you can also get something. I get more often than not. I get something that is close to what I wanted with Genmoji because I have a framework for what I think they should look like because it's Apple's emoji as the starting point. So yeah, exactly. I think by and large this is actually a good feature that they should have made.
Yeah, I agree. I have so I commissioned some emoji a while ago, some custom emoji from the artist who works on Emojipedia. And I tried to replicate those using Genmoji, and they're not as good, but they're good. Like they're good, and that's a little disturbing, right? Because I paid an artist to follow my instructions to the letter, and then I just threw a prompt into Genmoji, and kudos to Apple for making the image generation interface a shopping interface, right? That they're like, don't like this one, swipe to the next one, and it keeps generating alternatives.
Yeah,
that's so smart because some of them just ain't it, right? Some of them are bad, and you're like, nope. And it feels if you had to go through the generation process time and again until you got one right, you'd be so frustrated. But instead, they're like, yeah, throw away the ones you don't like, keep the ones you do like. And so I was able to generate, a pretty good cute Skeletor that I from Genmoji. I was able to generate a Tony Sindelar pointing reference acknowledge that looks more like Tony. I mean his emoji is a looks like a cartoon version of him that's kind of,
because I guess
again, the
you
artist
can actually use a photo of Tony to make that one.
Yeah. And again, I think you could argue that the artist sort of making a cartoon version of Tony might be better, but like I can see that in that moment I generated an emoji that looks like my friend making that symbol, where I paid an artist to do it. And again, I don't love that I'm paying artists, but most people are not going to pay an artist to do something like that. I did that for kicks, basically. But like I've got my favorite Genmoji so far is Tim Cool.
Oh,
which
yes,
is literally Tim
Cool.
Cook on a surfboard.
Yeah, because of a spelling error instead of Tim Cook,
somebody
said
typed
Tim Cool
instead of Tim Cook, and I said, I love Tim Cool. I love this idea. Let's go with it. Tim Cool. Tim Cook, sunglasses, cool dude surfing was the prompt, and he's not wearing sunglasses, but it's recognizably Tim Cook, and that's the most important part.
ChatGPT in Siri.
Yeah. I connected my ChatGPT account because I pay for ChatGPT to the OS, and what I found is there are, and I told it not to ask me. I said just use ChatGPT if you want.
Oh, if you're ever gonna, I'll tell you right now, it just always just turn that prompt on. Like you don't want to be dealing with the like, would you like me? No, it's annoying to get rid of that. Yeah, do the
yeah. No. So what I found actually is funny. I ask things of Siri, and sometimes it tries to answer it itself, and I say, "Oh, honey, no. Like you can't answer this question. You should have gone to ChatGPT."
This is the move. But what I do, I don't know if you've ever done this. I will just say, because you're in the Siri dialogue, no, ask ChatGPT that.
Yeah.
Go back and do it.
Yeah, because that's the problem right now, is that Siri is trying to answer some of these questions. It's like, you do a bad job. Just ask ChatGPT to do it now. And those answers are better. Although, again, I'll point out that although this is somewhat unpopular in some circles to point out, I ask ChatGPT lots of things, and it just gets them wrong, like straight up wrong. The other day, one of my tests was asking about something I don't know the answer to, which is, did any of the other players at Florida State who played with Buster Posey when he was at Florida State University make the major leagues? Buster Posey, future Hall of Fame Giants catcher, president of baseball operations for the Giants now, played at Florida State. Did any other major leaguers play with him there? I was curious. I didn't know the answer. And it came back. ChatGPT came back and said, yes, he did. There's this guy who was in the minor leagues and never made the majors. And there's this guy who was in the minor leagues and never made the majors. So I said to ChatGPT, so the answer was actually no. And this is correct. None of them made the majors, and therefore the answer to the question was no. But it answered yes. And I asked it another question, and I said, has an American cabinet member ever been assassinated? And it said, yes, this guy got shot, but he survived, and this guy got shot, but he survived. So no. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, so here's my problem with all of this is fundamentally everybody raves about AI stuff, and I know that there's, again, I think that there's lots of places where the AI stuff can be very helpful, but oh my God, in the context of what we ask Siri in terms of like world's knowledge, it's still, even the leading models are still so very bad at it. So I don't love that about it. But, you know, Mike, when I asked Siri that initial Buster Posey question, you know what it told me? It said, oh, Buster Posey's coach at Florida State was this guy. Had nothing to do with my actual question. It was literally a random fact pulled from the ether by Siri, and appreciably worse, even though, because it didn't understand the question. ChatGPT understood the question and got it wrong, and then sort of eventually came around to getting it right, but Siri didn't even get it. So I don't know. I'm not happy about it, but I think one of the big problems with it is that Siri needs, essentially, if you've got ChatGPT turned on, Siri kind of needs to get out of the way. It needs to be smarter about saying like, oh, I'm bad at this. Let's ask ChatGPT this question instead.
Yeah, and the other issue that I have is that it's not, the ChatGPT in Siri is not as good as ChatGPT on its own, because it doesn't have any access to the internet, and so
Right.
it can't give up-to-date information. And so, I've used it a few times, and on its own, Siri has given me some ChatGPT answers, which is good. But by and large, if I want to ask a question that I think ChatGPT would be better at, I don't ask Siri. I open the ChatGPT app because I know I'm more likely to get the response that I want in the way that I want it by just starting the conversation there.
Mm-hmm. Even then, I have issues, but at least it's better than that. So yeah, it's not great. There's some potential, and and again, it'll do generation in writing tools, right? That's another place where you can tell it to generate something using ChatGPT, and it will do that.
Yeah.
Because Apple's models aren't going to do that.
No. Visual intelligence. Now, this is where you can have your camera look at the world and tell you things. I will say visual intelligence, it's one of these classic features that I am not sure when to use it, because every time I've tested it, I don't get results that I find to be good. So I've only used it a few times. I have no habit formed. I never think about this feature because at the moment, at least, it also feels really half-baked. Like I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this thing and why it is more beneficial than me just taking a picture of something and then uploading it to various apps and services to get
It's
answers.
basically just a shortcut for that.
Yeah,
is what it is.
And I just haven't found it to be really very reliable or predictable, and so I don't really have much of an opinion on this feature, to be honest. I don't use it very often.
And the utility is a question. So I just took a picture of my dog as we were talking, and it says a white dog is sitting attentively in front of a washing machine, likely watching or waiting for someone. This behavior is common in dogs, as they often feel comforted by following human routines or are curious about household activities. Well, yeah, somebody is vacuuming in the other room, and the dog is sitting on the carpet looking out, and the washing machine is in front of her. This is all true. But but why? But why?
I just did this with I just looked at my desk and my AirPods there, and it says, the image showcases a pair of wireless earbuds in their charging case placed on a colorful mat featuring a cartoon design alongside a table or laptop. Tablet or laptop. Wireless earbuds are compact, portable, and offer the convenience of listening to audio without the hassle of tangled wires. Like, look, this is all impressive stuff, but
for like an alien coming down from another planet and being like, "What? Tell me about what happens on Earth." But
I'm not sure what the use is of that, right? Because also as well, I guess you can then ask questions. You could do the thing like in the ad, like what kind of dog is that? Like, that's the thing, because you can then ask questions of the image. Like, you can kick off a conversation that way. But yeah, I've just yet to find a like compelling, reliable use of this feature.
Yeah, if I tap the Ask button or the Google button, basically. When I take a picture of my Ember mug, it says this is an Ember mug. So that's something. But again, I kind of want another layer here, right? I want a layer where it's trying to intuit right off the bat what it is. And instead, it sort of just takes the picture and says, okay, tap something or ask a question. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, I get the idea here, but I want it to be more proactive. I want it to do a better job of interpreting what I might actually be asking. And I just don't, No, I have not had success with it.
The writing tools, you mentioned those a little bit. Now, I know that obviously you're very anti the writing tools for very good reasons. You are a writer. I wouldn't use podcasting tools if they made them.
Accurate. They're not for me, but I have been very pro the writing tools because I think there are a lot of people who are not comfortable writing. And
I'm
if
sorry,
the computer can help them.
I don't mean in concept. I mean as in you as a user is what I mean, right? Like you're not going to use them.
Never.
So like anti-use is more what I'm trying to say, but not like conceptually against. Where I am a fan of having like a very competent and kind of complex system that is built into the device to check my grammar and punctuation and also make suggestions for me. Like I wrote a post the other day that I was writing it in Croissant and cross-posting it, and I wanted to just check that my sentence structure was good, and I was able to use writing tools to just proofread that for me.
Yeah.
And it was like, yep, this is all good. And then I had the confidence to then post it because it wasn't going to have mistakes in it. And it has other good tools, right? Summarizing is good. Taking text and turning it into a list is good.
Yeah.
I'm not so interested in having it write for me from scratch. Like, I just don't really need that. But the tools are good.
Yeah. So some of this is in 18.1, but in 0.2 you can actually tell it specifically to do something to the text in a box instead of just tapping on the limited kind of pre-baked questions, which gives you more freedom to say, could this be a little funnier or
This
whatever,
style,
and it will take a crack at it. No, I think these are great. And again, I think my point is, didn't work for me, but that's because I'm a writer. Most people aren't. And a lot of people are not comfortable with language or comfortable with sharing their written language publicly, whether they're, at work writing an email or doing a social media post or whatever. And I think that it's great for that. And all these LLMs are generally pretty decent at doing things like generating summaries or doing the whole like make bulleted lists or make this into a table, like all those features that are there. There are a lot of things like that are good, I think, fundamentally.
And for a lot of people around the world, 18.2 is good because it brings Apple Intelligence. So it's currently been in US English, and you've been able to use it in different parts of the world, but you have to make a bunch of changes to your device. So it now is in a bunch more languages and places that speak English. So you'll also get features like notification and message summaries and stuff like that as part of 18.2. But I wanted to also touch on two 18.2 features that aren't related to Apple Intelligence. One of them is mail categorization, which works so good, it makes me so mad that it's iPhone only. Like, I am so mad about this because it works great. Like, it does a very good job of detecting where a message should live, whether it's like personal or transactions or promotions or whatever. And also, in a very un-Apple move, you can recategorize things if it got it wrong. Usually, like, Apple's like, don't worry, we got this. And then that's the end of it. But no, you can say, like, no, put this here or put this there. I really, really like this feature, and I wished it was on my iPad, too.
So I use a different system that auto-categorizes my messages, so this doesn't work for me.
Okay.
But it seems pretty good, and I do not understand why it isn't on the iPad and the Mac.
Yeah,
I just don't understand it.
Why would you do this? I really can't understand why you would do this. Because it's like, hey, get used to using your email in a certain way, but only on one device. Like, I'm like, if it wasn't on the Mac, fine, but like also not on iPad. Like, what are you doing?
So here's my theory. My theory is that it's not consistent across devices. And so by limiting it to the iPhone, because most people don't have two iPhones, the mail organization is happening on the device and you can see it and it's the same. Whereas if you've got an iPad 2, maybe those messages are in different places on your different devices, and they might have decided that was confusing.
The way in which you get it wrong is so minimal. It's like this thing goes in like newsletters and not promotions. Like, the point really is about keeping crap out of your inbox.
Yeah,
I don't care where it goes. Just don't put it in the inbox, right?
Yeah, I don't understand why it's not on the iPad. I agree. It's
the
same app.
Also, with 18.2, the AirPods Pro hearing test is available in more countries, and I did it this morning. So I sat down while me and Adina were having coffee and started it, and then realized, oh no, I actually have to be in absolute silence. So then I had to go upstairs, close the door, because it's playing these tones in your ears that you have to detect, and you tap when you can hear them, and some are so quiet. And I think they're doing some spatial audio kind of trickery as well to kind of like put it in different places to maybe test like how good you hear in certain areas. But this was a fascinating and very weird process, and I'm happy to report I have little to no hearing loss. Which, doing the test, I didn't think was going to be the answer, because I was going for some stretches where it was like, I can't hear anything. like I'm not tapping, nothing's happening. But I guess they're super quiet.
Yeah.
It's like I think it's like -1 or -3 in like in one of the ear or the other. So it's not like no hearing loss, but it is an amount which is like not a concern, I guess, maybe especially for my age. But yeah, I was sitting there, I'm like, oh no, I thought I had good hearing, but like I'm sitting there for like 20 seconds and like not hearing a thing. But yeah, no, it was good. And this is again, it's like one of these things where I'm just happy to have done that this morning. It made me feel good. It's like, great, I don't have any hearing loss. Like, good for me. And my AirPods told me that.
That's good.
Have you done this test?
I have.
And how were you? Did you come out okay?
Little to no hearing loss.
Okay.
It's funny because I actually had just gotten a hearing test like 2 weeks before.
Right.
The results were the same. And the answer is that in one ear there's a little tiny notch, but it's not that big. And what the hearing professional said is that's probably like at some point in your life, and it's in one ear. To that side of you, there was a very loud noise.
Yep.
And that's it. Right? Like that was probably it. But it's very small, and in Apple's context, it's little to no hearing loss. So that's great because I'm in my 50s, and so I'm starting out at least from this point with pretty good hearing. Our hearing gets worse when we get older, but it was pretty happy about it. So I was pretty happy about it. But I was going to make a joke about like now that there's UK hearing tests. Do they have like British noises that you have to hear? But I don't even know what those would be.
Hello, governor. Just in the corner.
Yeah, hello, mate.
Oh, hi, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
This episode of Upgrade is brought to you by the Data Citizens Dialogues podcast. As a listener of this show, you know that data is shaping our world today. But if you're ready for a deeper dive into the latest hot topics in data, then you need to listen to the Data Citizens Dialogues podcast, brought to you by Colibra, the leader in data intelligence. In every episode of Data Citizens Dialogues, industry leaders unpack data's impact on the world, from big picture questions like AI governance and data sharing to more nuanced questions like how do we balance offense and defense in data management. You'll hear first-hand insights about the data conversations affecting all kinds of industries, and you can expect guests sharing unique stories from some of the world's largest companies like Adobe, Fidelity Investments, Deloitte, Hewlett-Packard, McDonald's, and even the U.S. Coast Guard. I listened to an episode about how using data effectively and efficiently is improving healthcare and memorial care. I really enjoyed how the episode featured the people that are actually implementing the technologies that they talk about, so they can bring their first-hand experience to focus on some practical examples of the work that they've done, and making sure that they keep the focus on privacy, which is obviously very important in healthcare, at the highest level for their patients and how they manage to do that. The Data Citizens Dialogues podcast is bringing the data conversation to you, so start listening now. Follow Data Citizens Dialogues on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Our thanks to Data Citizens Dialogues for their support of this show and all of Relay. Let's finish out with some Ask Upgrade questions. First one comes from Andrew, who says, for years and years, I've backed up my various iOS devices to my Mac every month. This is useful when I move to the next model. However, should I use iCloud Backup instead? How do you think about and manage your iOS backups?
Wow. I haven't backed up my iOS devices to my Mac in years.
I've got to say, Andrew, I respect your determination.
I respect your skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, just use iCloud Backup is the answer.
And it will do it at night when you're charging. It's great.
Yeah. And if you don't have enough storage, I mean, yeah, you can just use your Mac, but I strongly recommend spending enough money on storage to get your devices backed up, and it just makes it very easy. And then I don't think about and manage my iOS backups. That's the truth, is that when it comes time, like this, just my mom a few years ago left her iPhone somewhere and had to get a new iPhone. It's like, she's iCloud backed up. It didn't matter. She just restored, and it was fine. Like, there was nothing to it. It's great. So that's what I recommend. And yeah, if you don't want to spend the money, okay, but you probably should, because it's just so easy and convenient to do it that way.
Yeah, because and
it happens automatically. That's the other thing. It happens automatically, where you may every month you're going to miss maybe a month worth of data. iCloud, it's just there. I rely on it, and it works fine.
And you can rest assured that if you don't have to worry about it not working, because Apple will tell you. Like if a device hasn't been backed up for I think it's like a month, maybe, or maybe less time, there's like an alert. It's like, hey, your device has not been backed up. So they you know they even they take care of you there too. So I think this is a great system. But if for some reason you can't afford it, then yeah, you're going to have to keep doing what you're doing, which is these periodic backups to another device. But I think by and large, and you have some controls about what you can and can't back up. So, like, if you do want to back up some things but not others, and that helps you keep within certain limits and levels, you can do that too. Bobby asks, just curious, but why is Upgrade usually longer than Connected?
I don't know. You tell me, Mike.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that is the case. I mean, which is odd because there's two of us and there's three of us on Connected.
Right.
I think this maybe comes down to two things. One is that this show is very like segment focused. So like I think we plan out the segments and we do the segments, right? In a way that it's just weird. This is just maybe my brain. Upgrade is segment focused and Connected is topic focused. And our segments do tend to be a little bit more like we talk about them this week or we don't talk about them at all, right? Like if we don't do Rumor Roundup this week and we have it prepped out, there's no point doing that Rumor Roundup next week because probably most of the stuff is done. So if we've prepped out a topic, by and large, we either do it or it goes away. And because of that, comes to the second part where we start the recording of this show earlier in the day. And I think for me and Federico, if we go too long on the show, we're going very late into our evenings at that point. So I think we're maybe we're a bit more like, let's try and cut the whole thing at 90 minutes, where this show is usually about an hour 45. And so I think that's the reason. And I expect one of the reasons Bobby has asked this question is because maybe they got their like Overcast Wrapped or something and could see, I listen to every episode, but there's more Upgrade than there is Connected. Maybe that's the case.
Yeah, that could be.
Yep. Jason said, I heard Mike. I don't know if this is you. It probably
not
wasn't.
me.
I heard Mike talk about using ChatGPT for search. How do you choose when to search there rather than Google? So I've been thinking about this a lot, Jason, because people keep asking me questions like this because I've been talking about using ChatGPT for search. And I think where I'm starting to come down to is I Google something when I know where I want to end up. Like I am Googling something that I know exists, right? Or like I am confident that I'm going to get to the place that I want to be at because I know how to use Google, right? Like Googling is the Googling effectively is understanding what words to put into Google to get the result that you want, which is actually not too dissimilar from AI prompting, but I'm just more familiar with like getting to a Google search. And for ChatGPT searching, it's more for when I do not know anything about my query. Like I have a question or I want some information about a subject area or a product area, and I do not know where I would get that information from. So I'll ask ChatGPT, and it goes out to the internet, pulls in a bunch of stuff, and then I will maybe go on to the web via the links that they give me and find out some of the stuff that I want. So that's kind of the two types of searches is like, I know this thing exists and I want you to find it for me, and I have no idea about this thing. Tell me more about it. That's kind of how I split them up.
All right.
And then Matthew asks, this is a question for you, Jason. So we've got two for each of us with a sandwich.
Love it.
This one comes from Matthew. I've wondered for a while about the discussion of off-the-record topics, particularly when media have access to Apple employees at in-person events. Why would Apple, particularly those in senior enough positions to be trusted as spokespeople, give any level of off-the-record information? Is it just to provide additional color, or is there an altogether different motive?
Yeah, it's a little bit. I want to say there's on background and off the record.
Yep.
Those are different. Off the record is you don't talk about this.
Yep.
Right, which is a very little use.
But that's a good distinction because sometimes people say someone told me this off the record. So like that still does happen, but yes,
that's obviously a record was made because off the record is supposed to mean I'm not going to report about this. Maybe it gives you some background understanding, but on background, the idea there is you're not making any direct quotes. You're just saying, look, I know this, but you can't say Apple PR person XYZ told me, quote, this, right? You don't say that. It's on background. The idea there is we're going to give you this information. You can share it, but you're not supposed to attribute it. Sometimes I'll even say not for attribution. And then this is where Nile and The Verge are like, we're going to attribute information to a person. We don't want to do it. Like, there's a lot of different ways to approach this. I find some of it is helpful. Some of it is silly. Like, I believe that the origination of this is that Apple was frustrated that people who were doing, I don't know whether it was like damage control or product briefings or something, were being quoted by name when they thought they were just passing on information to a writer. They ended up getting represented as the person who made a particular claim. And I think that there was, it was so long ago now, but I think that people were upset because that person's name just kept getting repeated but this person said this thing. Yeah. And that Apple decided that they wanted to approach it where in many cases, not even necessarily most cases, in many cases when product information was being handed out, that directly attributing it to a PR person when there were numerous PR people and all that was not really accurate because they were just the messenger, the conduit for information that was coming from Apple's product marketing group. And so there was this feeling of like, let's make this less personal. Let's not make this personal. Sometimes it is literally, we don't want you quoting us directly because we may say things in the quote that aren't what we are actually trying to say. And there's two ways to view that. You can view that as control. Oh, he used a phrase that isn't approved. We don't like that. And now that's out there forever. And it's a phrase we didn't want to use. Okay, I understand it. That's a control thing, whatever. So then there's this conspiracy theory part of this, which is every time anybody from Apple says anything, the conspiracy theory starts. And it's like, aha. Did you notice what they said? Do you know what this means? This means that Apple is doing this other thing. And it's all true now. And sometimes it means that, but mostly it doesn't mean that. Mostly it's just somebody said a thing. This is why one of the reasons why Apple exerts so much control over their message is because unlike maybe any other company, I don't know, people are parsing their words and trying to find secrets that are revealed. And one way you avoid that is by not allowing them to parse your words, is by having all the words that are out there either be in your press release or approved verbiage. And if you're in an interaction with another human being and you're just talking off the cuff, even if you're a very well-trained PR person who knows all the phrases you're supposed to use, because trust me, I've been in these briefings, you've been in these briefings. We get these briefings sometimes where the words that are used by the people in the briefing, the phrases that are used are literally the phrases in the press release. Like, everybody's been trained. This is like literally this is how we refer to this. It's groundbreaking, or it's earth shaking, or it's breakthrough, or whatever it is. Like, they'll use one of those and only the one that's approved. That's just how it goes. So PR, some of it's control, and some of it is knowing that there are people out there who will take any phrase that is not approved and run with it in directions that are maybe true, but probably not true, misleading. And they're like, aha, but Anand Lalshimpi, when talking to Jason in New York, said that the processing block on the M3 was actually this, and that means, and it's like, that's not what. So they're like, yeah, Jason, you can talk to Anand, but you can't quote him. And can I say that I talked to him? Well, and it gets weird. So yeah.
I've also felt, at least in some of the interactions that I've had, that there are sometimes pieces of information that they don't mind being out there, but they're just too specific or nerdy for Apple to be talking about.
Right. And
right?
again,
so it's like, we're fine if you say this because it's fine for that to be out there, but we don't have a way to tell people this little piece of information
and we
in
don't
a
want
way
people
that is
pointing
worth
and saying,
sparing the time.
Yeah, people also don't want to. They don't want people saying, "Aha, Apple said this," again, because it leads down that path of it's got this imprint, and now what does it mean? And they want that stuff to just kind of get out there, or they'll answer my question, but it ends up being a thing where I end up saying, it's my understanding that this thing is happening on the M3 chip. Or the M4 chip. And, sometimes that does literally come from a briefing where Anand is on the briefing, and I know then there's a new chip, and I'm like, I'm going to ask a chip question because Anand is here and he looks real lonely. Nobody's asking him chip questions. Do they not know who this is? Let's ask Anand a chip question, right? But then a lot of times it ends up being like this. Here's the thing about that I learned about the M4, and not Anand told me this thing, right? Like, and that's just how those are the ground rules, and you just got to deal with them. But do they go too far? Do they happen too often? I would say yes. I think it's become a reflex now. There was also that John Gruber thing where he described like the whole process of going to the briefing and where it was and who the people were and the couches they sat on and stuff. And I feel like that was one of those moments where Apple was like, okay, we need to set some ground rules because the story should never be our briefing. The story should be our products, right? And that's not about like, we don't want to admit that there was a couch that people sat on. It's and that, you know, they're in this place in Tribeca and that we went up to the 4th floor or whatever. It's more like, we don't want people talking about our place in Tribeca. We want them talking about the new MacBook Pro.
That was surprise announcement of OS X Mountain Lion.
Classic. That's a good one.
The one dropped out of nowhere,
right? And it becomes that was a great moment. I love that moment too. That's the one where MG Siegler and I walked out of Infinite Loop and we're both like, oh my God, right? Like it was a surprise.
Yep. I remember exactly where I was when this news broke. Like I was sitting at my desk in one of my terrible bank jobs, like when I used to work in the branches. I was a bank branch manager at the time. Hated it. And I remember being there, and that made that day better because it was interesting. And I just read a bunch of OS X reviews out of nowhere instead.
Yeah, people didn't believe us. Like we dropped on at embargo time, and people were like, "Is this a joke?" It's like, no, it's not a joke.
Because it would seem like it, right?
Because this is back before they came out every year. It was like, and there had been no reports that there was going to be an update to Lion, and then Mountain Lion just dropped, and that was it. It was great, and you can see why if you do all that work. The last thing you want is one of your writers to focus on the mechanics of the presentation instead of what you're trying to get out there. So I think that's part of what's going on. This is a great question for Matthew. The ways of Apple PR are mysterious, but I think it is this combination of wanting to completely control the message, which you can't do, right? Because the press, when you give it to the press is going to do what they're going to do with it. Like that's why you deal with the press, is that some people will just take it from the source and take the marketing and go to Apple's website, and that's all they'll ever do, and like, so be it. But the press gets it to a broader audience, but you do have to take it with the press's impressions and emphasis that is going to be different from your press release. And it's just part of the way the game is played, but even in then, they want to limit what they provide to the press and stay on message. They're very disciplined about that. And that also includes obscuring some aspects because, you know, and again, it's not like it used to be. In the Steve Jobs, Katie Cotton era, the goal was to make Apple a black box. Like you should never even hear about other people who work at Apple. It should just be Apple. And Apple speaks in the voice of Steve Jobs, by the way, but it's just Apple. And it's not like that anymore, but some aspects of this remain. And I think part of that is the idea that there are no stars in Apple PR, that the products are the stars. And that you know, they should, and it's nothing against the people in Apple PR, but like Apple doesn't want some spokesperson to be famous for saying a thing. That's not what they want. They want the product to be famous. That's it.
If you would like to send in a question of your own for us to answer in a future episode of the show, please go to upgradefeedback.com. You can also send in your feedback and follow up for us there. You can check out Jason at sixcolors.com, and you can hear him at theincomparable.com and here on Relay, where you can listen to me too. You can also check out my work at cortexbrand.com. You can find us both on Mastodon, Threads, and Blue Sky because of our sins. You can also watch the clips of this show on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, where we are at Upgrade Relay. This show, one it may be drawing to a close, is not if you support us with Upgrade Plus. This week, we're going to be talking about gaming hardware and barbecuing hardware, I think.
Baby.
The twofer in today's episode. But don't forget, you get 20% off an annual plan if you sign up now. Go to giverelay.com to learn more. Thank you to our sponsors, that is Data Citizens Dialogues, Uni, and Delete Me. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week. Until then, say goodbye, Jason Snell.
Goodbye, Mike Hurley.